So the OnePlus 10T was plagued with controversy before the bloody thing even launched, thanks to a massive price and balls up, and also OnePlus's slightly bizarre decision to scrap that alert slider. A decision which nobody seems to enjoy, especially hardcore OnePlus fans. It's not just a slap in the face, it's a boot to the crotch and a full-on titty twister to boot. Not exactly the most illustrious of starts by any means, but all the same, I've spent a couple of weeks with the OnePlus 10T. I've taken it on holiday with me, I've had my SIM slapped in there for some of that time. So here's my in-depth review, and for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Now, the OnePlus 10T costs from 629 quid, almost 200 GBPs cheaper than the OnePlus 10 Pro, despite the fact that you get the speedier Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 packed inside here, as well as crazy fast battery charging. And if you hoy an extra 100 quid at OnePlus, you'll also get double the storage and the memory, which is what I've got here in this review model. But of course, it's not all roses and handjobs in the wonderful world of the OnePlus 10T. It is better than the 10 Pro in some respects and cheaper, but to achieve that more affordable price, some sacrifices have been made, and I'm not just talking about that alert slider. On top of that, it's also up against some very stiff competition at this price point, the likes of the Oppo Find X5, the Xiaomi 12, and the Realme GT2 and GT2 Pro. This right here is the Jade Green model, and I like that pale bluey green colour, which morphs to a classic silver hue in softer light. I would have preferred a matte finish that completely shuns fingerprints and other grime, but those greasy marks are reasonably well masked until the light hits it in a certain way. And you could also grab the OnePlus 10T in a textured moonstone black design if this one isn't to your liking. The camera bump has now been integrated more cleanly into that arse end, so now it's more of a smooth curve rather than a hard edge. I really love that smooth transition. Definitely OnePlus has been taking some design cues from its sister company Oppo. But of course the OnePlus 10T is an absolute friggin' beast, measuring 6.7 inches and weighing over 200 grams. Definitely one for you fans of bigger blowers. And while the OnePlus 10T definitely gets a bit mucky, once you give it a bit of a rub down, it still looks box fresh. I've been handling this thing pretty roughly the last couple of weeks just to see how it would handle everyday existence, and thankfully the Gorilla Glass 5 plated front and back still in pristine condition. However, the OnePlus 10T is not full-on water resistant, it's merely splash resistant, so not a good idea to take it into a nice hot bubbly bath with you. You've got Android 12 on here with OxygenOS 12.1 slathered on top, same as the OnePlus 10 Pro, and that software experience is basically identical. There's nothing new to report here. You've still got your customizable shelf, your dedicated gaming mode, your Horizon Light notifications alert, which looks quite nice, your funky range of always-on displays. As ever, this thing is packed with customization options, so you can tweak the UI to your heart's content, get it looking just the way you want it. The OnePlus 10T's in-display optical fingerprint sensor does its job nicely, only failing when your hands are particularly clammy or dirty. And the face unlock also works a charm, even in quite testing light. And yes, it's been banged on about incessantly ever since OnePlus revealed it, but the lack of an alert slider on this thing really does hurt it. It's such a handy tool that it really has been a miss here, that's for sure, and here's hoping that OnePlus actually reads the comments on its website and realises it's not the best idea it's ever had. As for updates, well, you could expect a good bit of Android 13 and OxygenOS 13 later in 2022, fingers crossed, and then OnePlus has promised a further 2 Android OS updates and then 4 more years of security updates beyond that as well, so pretty good for a non-Google phone. Like many 2022 handsets, you've got a perfectly flat display, and it is a 6.7 inch whopper. We're talking AMOLED tech here, same as most mid to premium priced rivals, and it pumps out crisp, attractive Full HD Plus visuals. Colour reproduction is excellent, and you can fiddle around in the display settings if you want some more natural hues or more punchy, vibrant output, while the OnePlus 10T also supports HDR10+ video. It's bright enough to use outdoors no matter what the conditions, and the auto brightness does its job admirably. The only issue I had with the display was what appeared to be a bit of screen burn appearing after just a few days, courtesy of that always on display. If I was using an app with a black background, I could still clearly see the time and the date from the always on display registering there on the screen, which was a little bit terrifying, but thankfully it just seems to have been some sort of weird glitch because it's now rectified itself. Oh, and as far as the refresh rate goes, well, it tops off at 120Hz. You can also manually select between 60, 90 or 120 if you don't want it to automatically flip between them. You've got a stereo speaker setup, which is perfectly great for a good bit of Netflix or Disney Plus or YouTube or whatever. But if you want to enjoy a bit of music on the OnePlus 10T, you'll definitely want to get some Bluetooth wireless streaming on the go, and the audio experience is fantastic. You've got support for LDAC, aptX HD, all that good stuff. Sadly, like most rivals, bugger all headphone jack action here, but if that bums you out, you could always grab the Asus Zenfone 9 instead, one of very few premium smartphones that actually still rock a jack. Now, one of the reasons for grabbing the OnePlus 10T over the older Pro is the fact you've got that updated Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 chipset. Not a massive leap in performance or energy efficiency, but it is definitely an upgrade. And as I mentioned before, this review model comes stacked with 16 gigs of memory, so I certainly haven't seen any apps closing down in the background. That's helped along, of course, by OnePlus's System Boost feature. Everything I've chucked at the OnePlus 10T has run beautifully, and gaming is a pleasure too, helped along by the flat responsive screen and those dedicated gaming tools, which can help keep you focused and record the action on demand, not to mention loads of other stuff. You got slightly improved coolant tech versus the 10 Pro thanks to a bigger vapor chamber, and this helps to keep the OnePlus 10T from getting too toasty, even when you fancy piddling about smacking 10 bells out of endless hilltop gribblies in Genshin Impact. OnePlus also appears to have cunningly cribbed some of that excellent antenna tech from the Oppo Find X5 series of smartphones, and I've had absolutely no issues with the 5G connectivity when I've been out and about. The Wi-Fi range is really strong as well. As for the battery tech, well, it's a 4800 mAh dual cell battery packed inside of this lovely shiny chassis, slightly smaller than the 10 Pro, but I've had bugger all issue with the battery life on this thing, even with my sim in there, even with lots of screen on time. We're talking 6 or 7 hours in a single day. It hasn't died on me before I've been all tucked up with Teddy. And if you are a massive fan of ridiculously fast charging, well, the OnePlus 10T will certainly float all of your boats. It supports 150-watt charging, similar to the Realme GT Neo 3, which is priced about the same. And you do get a compatible adapter bundled in the box. I believe the adapter is 160 watts, so you're covered on that front. But you do have to turn off the smart charging in the battery settings to actually get the fast charging to work, so bear that in mind. And speaking of which, that smart adaptive charging is a little bit aggressive here on the OnePlus 10T. It immediately starts making assumptions about your sleeping habits after just a day or two. So I found a couple of days I would get up slightly earlier and I would still only have 80% charge on this thing. As for whether that fast charging will damage the battery, well, OnePlus is pretty confident that all of its safety measures that's packed inside of this thing will mean that over the course of 2 or 3 years, even with constant charging, that battery health will remain good. But of course, we'll have to wait and see on that front. And also, unlike a fair few smartphones at this price point, there's no wireless charging support here on the OnePlus 10T. It's no biggie, but it may put some people off. Now, if you squint real hard at that camera tech, you'll notice that the OnePlus 10T doesn't sport that usual Hasselblad branding. And OnePlus has straight up admitted that the camera isn't as good here versus the 10 Pro. So what's actually changed, and does it matter? Is the OnePlus 10T still a dependable daily snapper? Well, the hardware here is a 50 meg Sony IMX766 sensor with optical image stabilization, same as what you'll find on the cheaper OnePlus Nord 2T, and basically shag loads of other 2022 smartphones. You've still got those 10-bit photo capture skills, so landscapes are not only packed with detail, but they also look perfectly natural, close to what you'll see with your actual peepers. Occasionally you will spot some lens flare and saturation in stronger light, but overall the OnePlus 10T is well behaved. And it can cope with HDR conditions too. Close-up shots aren't really a problem either. That camera focus does its job admirably, only failing in quite extreme darkness. But in rather low light, the OnePlus 10T still does a commendable job, as long as there isn't any serious motion. If anything is moving in frame, chances are it will come out blurry. Color reproduction here isn't as strong as some rivals like the Pixel, but your pics won't be too murky either, and you'll still get enough detail packed into your snaps so they don't look crap when you do chuck them up on your telly. The OnePlus 10T's 8 meg ultra-wide angle shooter is similar to what you'll see packed onto much cheaper smartphones. Sure, you can fit a lot more into frame with this, which is quite handy at times, but those colours are balked and you'll see less finer detail in your snaps, especially in the evenings and in softer light. And unlike the Pro model, there is no telephoto shooter here on the OnePlus 10T. That final lens is a basic 2 megapixel macro effort. And while you can digitally zoom up to the 10 times level before taking a pic, you'll probably want to stop at around the 3 to 4 times level unless you want a grainy, ugly picture. For your video recording needs, you can capture footage at up to 4K resolution at either 30 or 60 frames per second. And while some colours do occasionally seem a little blown out, the results were overall pretty solid. Image stabilization keeps things from getting too shaky when you're on the move, even when shooting at Ultra HD level. And if you're filming at night, you can still expect respectable results, although a certain amount of noise does predictably creep in when conditions are dimmer. As for that selfie cam, well, this is now centrally positioned rather than stuck away in a corner, but unfortunately it's not one of the best efforts around for your Instagram needs. At night times, this ain't much cop at all, and you will see some background saturation in brighter conditions, although at least your face tends to be sharply in focus and reasonably well lit at any time of day. And that right there is my full, final, frank review of the OnePlus 10T after a couple of weeks, and I gotta say I quite enjoyed using it as my full-time smartphone, but it doesn't really do anything at all to stand out from the excessive competition right now, apart from the ludicrously fast charging of course, but even then you can find that on some rivals like the Realme GT Neo 3. And I gotta say, I think most people would be just as happy with the OnePlus Nord 2T, which still offers pretty slick performance, strong battery life, and basically the same overall experience except in a more compact form factor and for a couple £100 less. Anyway, that's what I think. What do you guys reckon? Are you actually tempted by the OnePlus 10T? Or are you still absolutely furious about that alert slider? Because I know a lot of OnePlus fans are. So hit me up in the comments down below. Please do poke, subscribe and ding that notifications bell for more on the latest and greatest tech. And have yourselves a bloody wonderful rest of the week. Cheers everyone. Love you.